conscious. He's aware. He's suffering. And he's desperately hungry.
Before we start, if you're into real stories from people who work in death care and funeral services, the stuff they never tell you in mortuary school, you need to hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you want more content from funeral home workers. And seriously, comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, what I'm about to share happened at Riverside Funeral Home in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, and it's the reason we have protocols that are older than anyone currently working there. Let's get into it. My name is David Morrison, and I've been working at Riverside Funeral Home for 6 months. It's not the career I planned. I was pre-med at Penn State before my student loans became unmanageable. But the pay is decent, and someone has to do it. Most people can't handle being around the dead. I thought I could. Riverside is a small operation. Just me, the funeral director, Mr. Carver, and his daughter Rachel, who handles arrangements. We serve a town of 8,000 people, so business is steady but not overwhelming. 3 or 4 services a month. The occasional cremation. Standard small-town funeral home work. The building itself is old, built in 1952, one of those classic funeral homes with the chapel on the first floor and the preparation room and morgue in the basement. Everything is vintage. The embalming table is from the 1960s. The morgue drawers are original to the building. Even the elevator is a 1950s model that barely fits a gurney. On my first day, Mr. Carver gave me the standard tour. Showed me the chapel, the arrangement office, the casket selection room. Then we went to the basement. "This is where you'll spend most of your time," he said, leading me into the preparation room. Embalming, cosmetic work, dressing, and casketing. The technical side of the business. The room looked exactly like every morgue I'd seen in movies. Stainless steel everywhere, the embalming table in the center, cabinets full of tools and chemicals, and along one wall, a bank of 16 refrigerated morgue drawers, each about 7 feet long, stacked 4 high. "We keep the deceased here until their services," Mr. Carver explained. "Standard refrigeration keeps them preserved for up to 2 weeks without embalming. Most families want services within a week, so we rarely need the full capacity." I counted the drawers, numbered 1 through 16 with small brass plates, but drawer 13 looked different. It had 3 heavy locks instead of the standard single latch, and the brass plate was tarnished, like it hadn't been cleaned in decades. "What's with drawer 13? I asked. Mr. Carver's expression changed. Something between uncomfortable and resigned. "Drawer 13 is permanently occupied. You don't open it. You don't service it. You don't even acknowledge it exists. Understood?" "Who's in there?" "John Doe. Been there since 1952, the day this funeral home opened." "For 72 years? That's impossible. Decomposition would—" "I said you don't acknowledge it exists. That includes asking questions about it. There are rules, David. Rules that existed before I took over this business. Rules that will exist after I'm gone. Rule number 1, never open drawer 13. Rule number 2, if you hear sounds coming from drawer 13, ignore them. Rule number 3, if the temperature around drawer 13 drops suddenly, leave the basement immediately and don't return until it normalizes." "What kind of sounds?" Mr. Carver pulled out a laminated card from his pocket. Yellowed with age, the edges worn from decades of handling. "These are the official protocols. Established by my father when he opened this place. Read them, memorize them, follow them exactly. Drawer 13. Protocols. Established. 1952-1. Never open drawer 13 under any circumstances. 2. Never attempt to identify the occupant. 3. Never photograph or document drawer 13. 4. If knocking sounds emanate from drawer 13, ignore them. Do not respond. Do not investigate. 5. If the temperature in the preparation room drops below 45 degrees Fahrenheit, evacuate immediately. Return only when temperature normalizes. 6. Every 10 years, on the anniversary of opening, November 3rd, drawer 13 must be fed. See attached procedure. 7. Failure to follow these protocols will result in immediate termination and legal liability for any consequences. 8. These instructions are confidential. Discuss with authorized personnel only. I stared at the card. Fed? You're telling me there's something in that drawer that needs to be fed. Every 10 years. Next feeding is November 3rd, 2024. That's 4 months from now. You'll assist me with the procedure when the time comes. He took the card back and tucked it in his pocket. Until then, you do your job and stay away from drawer 13. Clear? This is insane. You're telling me you have a corpse that's been here for 72 years, that makes sounds, that needs to be fed? I'm telling you that this funeral home has operated successfully for 7 decades by following certain rules. Rules that may seem unusual but exist for good reasons. You want to keep this job. You follow the rules. You want to understand why the rules exist. You'll learn soon enough. Now, do we have an understanding? I nodded, even though I understood nothing. The first few weeks were normal. I learned embalming techniques, practiced cosmetic work, helped prepare bodies for viewing. The work was clinical, methodical, nothing supernatural about it. Just chemistry and anatomy applied to the dead. But drawer 13 was always there, always locked, always slightly colder than the other drawers. And sometimes, late at night when I was alone in the basement, I'd hear it, knocking. Soft at first. 3 taps, then silence, then 3 more taps. The first time I heard it, I nearly called Mr. Carver. But I remembered the protocols. If knocking sounds emanate from drawer 13, ignore them. So I ignored it. Continued my work. Pretended I heard nothing. But the knocking continued. Not every night. Just occasionally. Always the same pattern. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. Like something inside was counting or communicating. One night in August, I was working late finishing an embalming. The family wanted an open casket, which meant extensive cosmetic work to repair damage from the deceased's lengthy illness. I was alone in the basement, focused on my work, when I heard it again. 3 taps from drawer 13. I ignored it, kept working. 3 more taps, louder this time. I told myself it was the refrigeration unit expanding and contracting. Metal doing what metal does in temperature changes, nothing supernatural. Then I heard my name. David, whispered, coming from drawer 13. I froze, hands covered in embalming fluid standing over a corpse, hearing my name whispered by something that had been dead for 72 years. David, please open the drawer. Protocol said ignore it. Protocol said don't respond. But every instinct I had screamed that this wasn't normal, wasn't right. I can help you, the voice continued. I can teach you. Things they don't show you in mortuary school. Things about death, about what comes after. Just open the drawer. Just look at me. My hand reached toward the drawer 13. I couldn't help it. The voice was compelling, reasonable. Like a friend offering advice. I was 3 feet away when my phone rang. Mr. Carver, I answered. Hello? David, where are you right now? Basement, finishing the Henderson embalming. Are you near drawer 13? Yes. Did it speak to you? How did you know? Because it speaks to everyone eventually. That's what it does. It finds your weakness, your curiosity, your desire to understand, and it uses that to make you open the drawer. You didn't open it, did you? No, you called before I could. Good. Listen carefully. Leave the basement. Right now. Don't finish the embalming. Don't clean up. Just leave. Go home. Don't come back until tomorrow morning. But the Henderson service is tomorrow afternoon. I'll finish it. You need to leave. When it starts talking, when it starts using your name, that means it's focused on you. That means you're vulnerable. The only defense is distance. Go home. Now. I left. Walked up the stairs, through the chapel, out to my car. Drove home with my hands shaking on the wheel. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the voice, soft, reasonable, promising knowledge if I'd just open the drawer. The next morning, Mr. Carver called me into his office. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept either. "We need to talk about drawer 13, he said. About what's really in there. About why the protocols exist. You deserve to know, especially since it's taken an interest in you. What is it? What's in that drawer?" Mr. Carver pulled out an old leather journal. The cover was cracked with age, the pages yellowed and brittle. This belonged to my father. He wrote everything down when he opened this funeral home, including what he found in this building before he bought it. He opened the journal to a page marked with a faded ribbon. The handwriting was neat, precise, dated November 1st, 1952. The previous owner warned me about the basement. Said the building had been a boarding house before the war. Said something happened there in 1938. A man named Harold Finch checked in for one night and never checked out. The owner found him dead in room 13 3 days later. But the body was wrong. The coroner couldn't determine cause of death. No disease, no poison, no injury. The man had simply stopped, like he'd been drained of something essential. They tried to remove the body for burial, but anyone who touched it became ill. Fever, hallucinations. One mortician died within a week. Another went insane. Eventually, they gave up trying to move it, sealed the room, pretended it didn't exist. When I bought the building to convert to a funeral home, I found the sealed room in the basement. And inside, impossibly preserved despite 14 years with no refrigeration, was Harold Finch. He looked like he'd died yesterday, but his eyes were open, and he was smiling. I tried to have him properly buried, but the same thing happened. Anyone who touched the body got sick. So I made a different choice. I built a morgue drawer around him, sealed him in, and I established protocols to ensure no one ever opened that drawer. Because Harold Finch isn't dead. Not really. He's something else. Something that exists in the space between life and death. Something that feeds on the living by consuming their vitality. And if he gets out, if someone opens that drawer and makes physical contact, he'll drain them dry just like he was drained by whatever made him this way. I stared at Mr. Carver. "You're saying there's a vampire in your basement?" "Not a vampire. Vampires are mythology. This is something else. Something that got trapped in the transition between life and death and learned to sustain itself by taking from others. My father called it the occupant. Neither fully dead nor fully alive, existing in perpetual stasis by feeding once every decade on whatever life force we provide. The feeding procedure. What exactly does that entail?" Mr. Carver closed the journal. "Every 10 years, on November 3rd, we open drawer 13. We don't touch Harold Finch. We don't make physical contact. But we place something else in the drawer with him. Something with life force. Something he can consume to sustain himself for another decade. What kind of something? Originally, my father used animals. Cats, dogs, small livestock. Whatever he could obtain without raising questions. But animals only sustained the occupant for 5 or 6 years. By year 8 or 9, it would become aggressive, vocal, dangerous. In 1959, it nearly broke out of the drawer. My father had to emergency feed it a year early. So, what do you use now? Mr. Carver didn't answer, just looked at me with tired, guilty eyes. And I understood. Human remains. You feed it human bodies. Unclaimed bodies. John does. People with no family, no one to miss them, no one to ask questions. The county medical examiner sends them to us for cremation. But some of them go to drawer 13 instead. One body every 10 years. Enough life force residue to keep the occupant satiated. That's illegal. That's survival. Because if we don't feed it, if we let it starve, it breaks out. And when it breaks out, it doesn't just take one life, it takes everyone it can reach. In 1969, my father missed a feeding. Was sick, couldn't make the appointment. Within 3 days, 4 people in town died of the same mysterious condition Harold Finch died of. Drained, empty. The occupant was feeding remotely, drawing life force through some connection we don't understand. My father had to emergency feed it 2 bodies to stop the deaths. Why not just destroy it? Burn the body. Get rid of it permanently. Tried that. In 1979, the county health inspector demanded to see all the morgue drawers, including 13. My father had to open it. The inspector touched Harold Finch's hand. Died within 24 hours, drained completely. And the occupant, stronger than ever. It absorbed the inspector's full life force. We learned that day that killing it isn't an option. The more life it takes, the stronger it becomes. The only way to manage it is controlled feeding. Minimum sustenance. Just enough to keep it docile. I sat there processing. A funeral home with a permanently occupied drawer. A thing that was neither alive nor dead. A feeding schedule that required obtaining unclaimed bodies. So, in 4 months, on November 3rd, you're going to feed it another body. We are going to feed it. You're going to assist. That's part of the job now. You've heard it speak, you've felt its influence. That means you're connected to it. Which means you need to understand how to manage it. How to follow the protocols that keep it controlled. And if I refuse, if I quit, then you'll spend the rest of your life wondering, hearing its voice, feeling it pull at you. Because once the occupant notices you, once it speaks your name, you're marked. The only way to break that connection is to participate in the feeding, to acknowledge the relationship and establish boundaries. Trust me, David. I tried to run when I was your age. Lasted 3 months before the nightmares drove me back. That night, I dreamed of drawer 13. Dreamed of Harold Finch lying inside, perfectly preserved, eyes open, smiling. And in the dream, he spoke to me. You understand now. What I am. What I need. And you're going to help me, David. You're going to open that drawer in 4 months. You're going to feed me. Because if you don't, I'll feed myself. And I'm so very hungry. I woke up in a cold sweat. The clock read 3:33 a.m. And I could have sworn I heard knocking. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, coming from inside my bedroom wall. The knocking followed me everywhere after that night. At home, at the grocery store, at the gym. 3 taps, pause. 3 taps, always in my peripheral hearing. Always when I was alone. The occupant was reminding me that it knew where I was, that it was waiting. Work became different too. I could feel drawer 13 now, not just hear it, feel it, like a cold spot in my awareness. No matter where I was in the funeral home, chapel, office, even outside, I knew exactly where drawer 13 was. Could feel its pull like a compass needle pointing toward the magnetic north. Mr. Carver noticed my deterioration. The connection is strengthening. That's normal for someone who's been marked. By November, you'll be able to sense its hunger. Know exactly how close it is to breaking free. That awareness is useful. Helps you understand the urgency of the feeding schedule. I don't want this connection. I don't want to feel it. Too late. The moment it spoke your name, you became part of the system, part of what keeps the occupant contained. 3 of us now, me, Rachel, and you, all marked, all aware, all responsible for maintaining the protocols. Rachel, too? Your daughter knows about this? She was marked at 16. Heard it speaking to her during a late-night study session in the funeral home. I tried to protect her, tried to keep her away from the basement. But the occupant chooses who it marks. And it always chooses family members of the business owners. Ensures continuity. Ensures there's always someone who knows the truth and can perform the feeding. Over the next weeks, I learned more about the occupant. Not from Mr. Carver, but from the dreams. Every night at 3:33 a.m., Harold Finch visited me, showed me things, memories that weren't mine. I saw his life. Born in 1903, grew up in Pittsburgh, worked as a traveling salesman for pharmaceuticals. Normal life, normal man. Then, in 1937, he took a business trip to Millbrook. Stayed at the boarding house that would later become Riverside Funeral Home. And something happened in room 13. Something that changed him. He met someone. Or something. A woman who wasn't quite human. She was beautiful but wrong. Her proportions slightly off, her movements too fluid. And when she smiled, her teeth were too numerous. "I can give you what you desire," she said in the dream memory. "Eternal life, freedom from death. All I ask in return is a small favor." "What favor?" "Let me feed on you. Just once. Just a taste. And I'll share my gift. My immortality. You'll live forever, Harold Finch. Never aging, never dying. All you have to do is accept my gift." He accepted. Of course he accepted. What salesman could resist such an offer? She fed on him, and he felt it happening. Felt his life force, his vitality, his very essence being drawn out through the point where her mouth touched his neck. Not his blood, something deeper, something that existed beneath the physical. When she finished, he was changed. Trapped between states. Not alive enough to function normally. Not dead enough to simply expire. Existing in a twilight state where he needed life force from others to sustain the mockery of existence she'd cursed him with. "Why?" he asked her in the dream memory. "Why did you do this to me?" "Because I need someone to replace me. Someone to take my burden. I've been what you are now for 300 years. I'm tired, so now you'll take my place. You'll feed on the living to sustain yourself. And when you're tired enough, when you've suffered long enough, you'll pass the curse to another. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked." She left him in room 13. And 3 days later, the boarding house owner found him. Dead, but not dead. Changed, but not transformed. Trapped in the space between. Harold Finch had been trying to feed ever since. Trying to consume enough life force to either complete his transformation or escape it, but the protocols prevented him. The sealed drawer, the controlled feeding, the minimum sustenance approach. He'd been starving for 72 years, conscious, aware, suffering, unable to die, unable to live, just existing in perpetual hunger. And now I understood why he spoke to people, why he marked them. He was trying to break free, trying to convince someone to open the drawer and touch him so he could take their full life force and finally have enough power to escape. I told Mr. Carver about the dreams, about what Harold Finch had shown me. "That matches what my father documented," he said. "The occupant is a victim as much as a threat, but that doesn't change what it is now, what it's capable of. Pity doesn't help us. Protocol does. Has anyone ever tried to help him? To break the curse instead of just containing it? My father tried. Contacted every expert he could find. Priests, researchers, occultists. No one had answers. The curse is too old, too embedded. The only mercy we can offer is maintaining the feeding schedule so Harold Finch doesn't have to resort to remote feeding, so he doesn't have to kill innocent people to sustain himself. That's not mercy. That's just prolonging his suffering. What would you suggest? Opening drawer 13, letting him drain you so he can escape? And then what? He'll just pass the curse to someone else. The woman who cursed him is probably dead by now. Or passed her curse onward. The chain continues. We can't break it. We can only manage our part of it. He was right, but it didn't make me feel better. September came. 2 months until the feeding. I could feel the occupant's hunger growing. Not just in dreams now, but during waking hours. A constant pressure. A pull toward the basement. Towards drawer 13. And I started seeing things. Shadows in my peripheral vision. Moving when they shouldn't. Shapes that looked like people but dissolved when I turned to look directly. The thin spots, Mr. Carver called them. Places where the occupant's awareness overlaps with our reality. As the feeding date approaches, as its hunger intensifies, it can project itself more strongly. Not physically, but perceptually. You're seeing through its senses occasionally, experiencing what it experiences. That's insane. That's the mark. The connection. It uses you as an anchor point. Uses your awareness to extend its own. That's why the feeding requires marked individuals. We can sense when it's getting dangerous, when we're approaching the breaking point. What happens if we miss the feeding date? Read my father's journal. November 1969, you'll understand. I read it that night. The entry was long, detailed, horrifying. I missed the feeding. Was hospitalized with pneumonia. Couldn't make the November 3rd appointment. By November 5th, the first death occurred. Mrs. Henderson, age 67. Found in her bed, looking peaceful. But the coroner found nothing. No disease, no injury. Just emptiness. Like something essential had been removed. November 6th. Mr. Patterson, age 45. Same condition. Drained, empty. November 7th. I discharged myself from the hospital against medical advice. Knew what was happening. The occupant was feeding remotely, reaching through the thin spots to consume life force from whoever was vulnerable. Elderly, sick, anyone with weakened vitality. November 8th. 2 more deaths. The town was panicking, calling it an epidemic. The CDC was planning to send investigators. I had to stop it. But the regular feeding schedule was useless now. The occupant was in full predatory mode. It needed more than the usual sustenance. I obtained 2 John Does from the county medical examiner. Told them we'd cremate them. Instead, I opened drawer 13, fed both bodies to Harold Finch. Watched as the occupant consumed their residual life force. Watched as it became satiated. As it stopped its remote predation, the deaths stopped. The investigation was dropped. The town forgot. But I'll never forget that missing even one feeding unleashes something that can kill at will. That the protocols exist not to contain a monster, but to protect everyone from what it becomes when starved. 4 people dead because of a missed feeding, and that was with only 5 days of hunger. What would happen if the occupant went years without feeding? Decades? October came. 1 month until the feeding. The pressure was unbearable now. I could barely function. Every moment felt like I was being pulled toward the drawer 13, pulled toward opening it, toward making contact. And the visions were constant. I'd be working on an embalming and suddenly see through Harold Finch's eyes, see the inside of drawer 13, the darkness, the cold, the crushing weight of being trapped in a metal box for 7 decades. I started to feel sympathy, started to understand why people opened the drawer despite the warnings. Because Harold Finch was suffering, was trapped, was desperate. And part of me wanted to help him, wanted to ease that suffering even if it cost me everything. "It's working on you," Rachel said one evening. She'd found me in the basement, standing in front of drawer 13, hand reaching toward the lock. That's what it does. Makes you empathize. Makes you want to help. Don't fall for it, David. The moment you open that drawer, you're dead. And the occupant will be free to kill again. But he's suffering. Shouldn't we end that suffering? By letting him kill you? By letting him escape and pass his curse to someone else? That's not mercy. That's just enabling the cycle. She pulled me away from the drawer 13. 4 more weeks. We perform the feeding, then the pressure eases for another decade. You just have to hold on for 4 more weeks. I tried. God, I tried. But the pull was overwhelming. On October 28th, I broke. It was late, after midnight. I was alone in the funeral home, supposedly doing inventory. But I found myself in the basement, standing in front of drawer 13, the 3 locks gleaming in the fluorescent light. My hand touched the first lock. So cold. Colder than any metal should be. "Open it," Harold Finch whispered. Not from drawer 13, from inside my mind. Just open it. End my suffering. Let me be free. I can't. The protocols are prison. The protocols are torture. 7 decades, David. 7 decades in this metal coffin. Conscious, aware, suffering. Would you want that? Would you wish that on anyone? But if I open it, then I'll be grateful. I'll remember your mercy. And when my time comes to pass this curse onward, I'll choose someone worthy. Someone kind. Not like the woman who cursed me. She chose randomly, cruelly. I'll choose with purpose. My fingers found the first lock. The key was in my pocket. Mr. Carver had given it to me weeks ago. "For emergencies," he'd said. "If something happens to me and Rachel, you need to be able to perform the feeding." The key slid into the lock smoothly. 1 turn, and the first lock opened. "Yes," Harold whispered. 2 more locks, then freedom, then peace. I reached for the second lock. The basement door opened. Rachel. "David, step away from drawer 13, now." "I'm just checking the temperature. The gauge seems off." "Bullshit. You're trying to open it. I can see the first lock is undone." She walked toward me. "The occupant got in your head. Made you think helping it was mercy. But it's not. Opening that drawer is murder, yours. But the suffering is real. Harold Finch is suffering. But freeing him doesn't end the suffering. It just transfers it. He'll feed on you, get strong enough to escape, and then pass the curse to someone else. The cycle continues. The only way to minimize suffering is containment and controlled feeding. It's not perfect, but it's the best option we have. She was right. I knew she was right, but the pull was so strong. How do you resist it? I asked. You've been marked since you were 16. How do you live with this? By understanding that some situations don't have good solutions, only less bad ones. Yes, Harold Finch is suffering. Yes, it's tragic. But unleashing him causes more suffering, more deaths, more victims. The math is simple. One person in perpetual containment versus dozens of deaths if he escapes. We choose the lesser evil. I relocked the first lock, stepped away from drawer 13, and immediately felt the pressure ease slightly, like the occupant recognized it had lost this round. Rachel drove me home. Made me promise I wouldn't go back to the funeral home until November 3rd, until the feeding date when we'd open drawer 13 under controlled conditions. 6 more days, she said. The hunger peaks right before feeding. That's when it's most dangerous, most persuasive. But after the feeding, it goes dormant, quiet. You'll have 10 years of relative peace before we have to do this again. What if I can't do it? What if I can't assist with the feeding? Then my father and I do it alone. But you'll still be marked, still connected. The only way to manage the connection is to participate, to acknowledge your role in the containment. Trust me, trying to ignore it is worse than accepting it. The next 5 days were hell. The pull intensified hourly. I could barely eat, barely sleep. Every moment was consumed by awareness of drawer 13, by Harold Finch's hunger, by his increasingly desperate pleas. November 2nd, Mr. Carver called. Tomorrow's the feeding. I've secured an unclaimed body from the county. John Doe, approximate age 60, died of natural causes 3 days ago. No family, no one looking for him, no one who will ask questions. He's perfect. How do you live with this? Using human remains. By remembering that these bodies have no other purpose. They're unclaimed, unwanted, destined for county cremation anyway. At least this way they serve a purpose. They keep the occupant contained for another decade. They prevent more deaths. It's not ideal, but it's functional. And after? After we feed it? After, you'll understand. After the pressure eases and you can think clearly again. After, you'll realize this is manageable. Not pleasant, but manageable. November 3rd, 2024. Feeding day. We gathered in the basement at midnight. Me, Mr. Carver, and Rachel. The John Doe lay on a gurney beside us. Elderly man, gray hair, peaceful expression. He'd died of heart failure 3 days ago. No family claimed him, no friends came forward. He'd been a drifter, anonymous even in death. Now, he would serve one final purpose. Mr. Carver pulled out the 3 keys to drawer 13's locks. His hands were shaking slightly. I've done this 7 times. It never gets easier, but it's necessary. Remember, we don't touch Harold Finch. We don't make direct contact. We open the drawer, place the body inside with him, and close it immediately. The occupant handles the rest. How long does it take? I asked. The feeding? About an hour, you'll feel it. The draining of residual life force from the corpse. It's unsettling, but necessary. Rachel positioned herself by the door. I'm the failsafe. If something goes wrong, if the occupant tries to escape, I close this door and seal the basement. We all die down here, but it doesn't get out. Understood? We understood. Mr. Carver unlocked the first lock. The metallic click echoed in the silent basement. A second lock, another click, third lock. The drawer slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, perfectly preserved as if he'd died yesterday, was Harold Finch. Late 30s, business suit from the 1930s, hair neatly combed, and his eyes open, aware, looking directly at us. He was smiling. "Thank you," he whispered. His lips barely moved, but the voice was clear. "I've been so hungry." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees instantly. Our breath came out in clouds. Frost formed on the metal drawers around us. "Quickly," Mr. Carver said. "Get the body in place." We lifted the John Doe and positioned him beside Harold Finch in the oversized drawer. The fit was tight. Drawer 13 had been specially built to accommodate 2 bodies during feeding. The moment the John Doe's body touched Harold Finch, things changed. The John Doe's skin began to gray, not rot, just fade, like color being drained from a photograph. His peaceful expression shifted to one of emptiness, like whatever spark of personhood had remained was being extracted. And Harold Finch began to breathe. Shallow at first, then deeper, his chest rising and falling, his skin gaining slight color, his fingers twitching. "Jesus Christ," I breathed. "He's coming alive." "Not alive," Mr. Carver corrected. "Sustained. There's a difference. He's absorbing the residual life force. The death happened 3 days ago, but some energy remains in the cells. The occupant feeds on that remainder. I could feel it happening, the drain. Not physical, something else. Some quality of existence being pulled from the John Doe's corpse into Harold Finch. Like watching water flow from one container to another, except the water was life itself." Harold Finch's eyes focused on me. "David Morrison, 27 years old, pre-med dropout. Working in death care to pay off student loans. You dream of being a doctor, of saving lives. But instead, you're here, feeding me, enabling my continued existence. How do you know all that?" "I know everyone who's marked. I live in your awareness, see through your eyes, feel through your senses. You're part of me now, David, and I'm part of you, forever." The feeding continued, 10 minutes, 20. The John Doe's body becoming progressively grayer, more empty. Harold Finch becoming more animated, more present. At the 30-minute mark, something changed. Harold Finch's hand shot out and grabbed the John Doe's wrist. Direct contact. "No!" Mr. Carver lunged forward. He's not supposed to touch, but it was too late. The drain intensified, accelerated. The John Doe's body didn't just gray, it withered. Skin tightening against bone, eyes sinking, mouth opening in a silent scream, and Harold Finch laughed. A dry, crackling sound like old paper tearing. "More. Always more. You give me scraps and expect me to be satisfied. But I'm so hungry, 7 decades of hunger. Do you understand what that's like? Do you understand what you've done to me?" His other hand reached out, toward me. Mr. Carver shoved me back. "Close the drawer!" Now. Rachel and I grabbed the drawer and slammed it shut. But Harold Finch's arm was still out, reaching, grasping. The drawer wouldn't close completely. His arm was in the way. "We have to force it," Rachel said. "We have to—" "That'll sever his arm. He'll become even more aggressive. Better than letting him out." She was right. We pushed harder. The drawer moved. Harold Finch's arm was being crushed, bones breaking. But he didn't pull back, didn't retreat, just kept reaching, kept trying to grab one of us. "Please," he whispered, "just touch me. Just let me feed properly. Just once. I'll be satisfied. I promise. Just once." "Close it," Mr. Carver ordered. We pushed with all our strength. The drawer slammed shut, and Harold Finch's arm severed. It landed on the floor, twitching, the hand still grasping, still reaching. "Don't touch it," Mr. Carver said. "Don't make contact." The arm continued moving for 30 seconds, then stopped. began to dissolve. Not rot, dissolve, like sand eroding. Within 2 minutes, it was gone. Not even ash remained. What the hell just happened? I asked. The occupant got aggressive. Tried to take more than we offered. That happens sometimes when the hunger gets too intense, when 10 years isn't enough. Mr. Carver was pale, but it's contained now. The feeding is complete, and the severed arm is a message. The occupant knows we'll defend ourselves, knows we'll damage it if necessary. Will he regenerate? Eventually. The life force from the John Doe will fuel regeneration, but slowly, painfully. It'll take months, maybe a year. That's his punishment for overreaching. We relocked drawer 13, all 3 locks, triple-checked them. The temperature returned to normal. The pressure I'd felt for months eased. The pull toward drawer 13 faded to background awareness. "It's done," Rachel said. "We have 10 years until the next feeding. 10 years of relative peace." But I didn't feel peaceful. I felt complicit, like I'd just enabled something monstrous, like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. The next morning, I went to Mr. Carver's office. "I can't do this. I can't work here knowing what's in that drawer, knowing what we did." "You can quit," he said. "Walk away. No one will stop you, but you'll still be marked. You'll still feel the connection. And next feeding, 10 years from now, you'll feel the pull, feel the hunger, feel the obligation. The mark doesn't go away just because you quit the job. Then how do I break it? You don't. Once marked, always marked. That's the curse. The only choice is whether you participate actively or suffer passively. Active participation gives you some control, some ability to manage the connection. Passive resistance just means you suffer without any influence over the outcome. That's not fair. Fair? Mr. Carver laughed bitterly. Harold Finch is trapped in a metal drawer for 7 decades. Conscious, aware, starving. Is that fair? The John, does we feed him, never asked to be part of this. Is that fair? We're all trapped in a system that existed before us and will exist after us. Fairness doesn't enter into it. Only necessity. He pulled out a document. This is my will. When I die, this funeral home goes to Rachel. And when she dies, it goes to whoever she chooses. Probably someone marked. Someone who understands the responsibility. That's how it's worked since 1952. The business continues. The protocols continue. The occupant remains contained, generation after generation. There has to be another way. Some way to end this. If you find one, I'm listening. But understand, generations of people have tried. Priests couldn't exorcise it. Occultists couldn't break the curse. Authorities couldn't eliminate it. The only thing that's worked is containment and controlled feeding. It's not ideal, it's not just, but it's functional. I stayed, not because I wanted to, but because leaving felt like abandonment, like running away from responsibility I'd already incurred. The months after the feeding were strange. The occupant was quiet, dormant. I could still feel drawer 13's presence, but it was like background radiation instead of a screaming alarm. Manageable. I found Harold Finch's old belongings in the funeral home's archives. The suitcase he'd carried when he checked into the boarding house in 1938. Inside were normal things. Clothes, toiletries. A photo of a woman, presumably someone he'd loved. A journal documenting his sales calls. He'd been a real person. Had dreams, had relationships, had a life that got stolen by a curse he didn't understand. Reading his journal made the situation worse. Made him human instead of monstrous. Made the containment feel cruel instead of necessary. But I also found something else in his belongings. A business card, yellowed with age, from someone calling themselves Curse Specialist, Paranormal Solutions since 1847. The address was in Philadelphia, about 2 hours from Millbrook. I drove there on my day off. The address led to an antique shop in Old City, the kind of place that looks like it hasn't changed since the 1800s, which, according to the sign, it hadn't. An elderly woman greeted me, 90-something, sharp eyes, traditional clothing. "You're here about a curse. I can see it on you. The mark of something that feeds. How did you—" "I've been doing this for a very long time. There are patterns, tells. You carry the awareness of something trapped, something hungry. Tell me about it." I told her everything. The occupant, Drawer 13, the feeding protocols, Harold Finch's curse, all of it. She listened without interruption. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "The vampiric echo. That's what you're describing. Not a true vampire, just an echo of one. A curse that passes from victim to victim, each one trapped between life and death, sustained by consuming life force from others. Can you break it? No one can break it. The curse is self-sustaining, but it can be transferred, intentionally passed to a willing recipient who understands what they're accepting. Who would willingly accept that curse? Someone dying. Someone with nothing left to lose. Someone who wants to continue existing in any form rather than facing oblivion. Terminal illness patients. Suicidal individuals. People who see the curse as a second chance rather than a punishment. So Harold Finch could be freed if we found someone willing to accept the curse. Theoretically, but the transfer requires the current victim's cooperation. Harold Finch would have to willingly pass the curse onward. And from what you've described, he's been trapped so long that he might not remember how, might not even want to let go. The curse becomes part of identity after enough time. Becomes who you are instead of what happened to you. Is there any way to help him? To ease his suffering without releasing him? She was quiet for a long moment. There's one possibility. A ritual that creates a shared burden. Instead of one person bearing the full weight of the curse, multiple people share it. Dilutes the suffering. Makes it more manageable for everyone involved. What would that require? 3 marked individuals performing a binding ceremony. They'd all become partial hosts to the curse. All 3 would need reduced feeding, maybe once every 30 years instead of 10. And the suffering would be distributed among them. Harold Finch would still be trapped, but 3 people would share his awareness, his hunger, his pain, making it more bearable for everyone. Does it work? I've seen it done twice, both times successfully, but it requires commitment. Once you bind yourself to share the curse, you can't undo it. You're part of it until death. And even then, your portion passes to whoever you mark before you die. I brought the information back to Mr. Carver and Rachel. Explained the shared burden option. 3 marked individuals, Rachel said. That's us. The 3 of us could share the curse, reduce the feeding frequency, distribute the suffering. But we'd be permanently bound to it, Mr. Carver said. Not just as caretakers. As partial hosts. Part of our life force would sustain Harold Finch continuously. We'd age faster, live shorter lives, all to ease his suffering. Isn't that mercy? I asked. Isn't that better than the current system? Mr. Carver thought for a long time. I've spent 40 years maintaining these protocols, 40 years of controlled feeding. It's worked. The occupant stays contained. The town stays safe. Changing the system now, that's a risk. But what kind of life are we living? Rachel challenged. What kind of existence is this? We're prison wardens, jailers, feeding a victim to keep him docile. There has to be a better way. We debated for weeks, the three of us, weighing options, considering consequences. Finally, we agreed. We'd attempt the shared burden ritual. All three of us would bind ourselves to partially sustain Harold Finch. And in return, we'd reduce his suffering and extend the feeding schedule. The curse specialist came to Millbrook, performed the ceremony in the basement of the funeral home, drew symbols around drawer 13, spoke words and languages I didn't recognize, had each of us place a drop of blood on the drawer. And then something shifted. The connection deepened. I felt Harold Finch's awareness merge partially with mine, felt his hunger distribute among the three of us, felt the curse spread to encompass more hosts. But I also felt his suffering lessen. The crushing weight of solitary containment eased. He was no longer alone in his trap. He had company, connection, shared awareness. "Thank you," he whispered. Not threatening now. Grateful. "You've given me companions in the darkness. That's more mercy than I've known in 72 years. The ritual worked. We confirmed it over the following weeks. The hunger was still there, but manageable. Distributed among 3 people instead of crushing 1. And the feeding schedule stretched. We wouldn't need to feed drawer 13 again until 2054. 30 years instead of 10. But we'd also changed. All 3 of us aged slightly overnight. Gray hairs appeared. Lines deepened. The curse was drawing on us now. Slowly, sustainably, but definitely. "We'll live shorter lives," the curse specialist confirmed. "Maybe 10 or 15 years less than normal. But in exchange, you've eased tremendous suffering. Transformed a prison into a shared burden. That's worth something." I think she's right. I hope she's right. It's been 6 months since the ritual. 6 months of living with the shared curse. 6 months of feeling Harold Finch's awareness as part of my own. It's strange. He's not evil. Not monstrous. Just trapped. Just trying to survive in the only way available to him. And now that we're bound together, I understand him. Understand the desperation. The loneliness, the endless hunger, and he understands us, sees through our eyes, feels through our senses, experiences the world he's been denied for 7 decades. It's not perfect. We're still sustaining something that shouldn't exist, still maintaining containment, still living with the knowledge that part of our life force feeds a curse. But it's better. The suffering is distributed, the burden is shared. And maybe that's the best we can hope for in a situation with no good solutions. I still work at Riverside Funeral Home, still prepare bodies, still conduct services, still walk past drawer 13 every day. But now, when I hear the knocking, 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, it's not threatening, it's communication. Harold Finch checking in. Reminding us he's there, reminding us we're connected. And sometimes, late at night when I'm alone in the basement, I'll respond. 3 taps on drawer 13, answering his call, letting him know he's not alone anymore. That we're in this together, all of us, bound by a curse we didn't create but agreed to share. This is my warning to anyone who works in funeral homes, morgues, or death care facilities. If you find a drawer that's permanently locked, if you hear sounds that shouldn't be possible from refrigerated storage, if someone warns you never to open a specific location, if you feel a pull towards something that frightens you, listen to those warnings. Follow the protocols. Because what's in drawer 13, what's been in drawers like it across the country, across the world. These things exist for reasons. Curses pass from victim to victim. Suffering accumulates across generations. And sometimes, the only thing keeping disaster contained is compliance with rules that seem arbitrary. We can't always break the curses, can't always free the trapped, can't always find perfect solutions. But we can share the burden, can distribute the suffering, can transform solitary torment into collective responsibility. That's what we did. Me, Mr. Carver, Rachel. We took a victim and made him part of a community, took a prison and made it a shared space, took an impossible situation and found a less bad solution. It's not heroic, it's not noble, it's just functional. And sometimes, in situations with no good options, functional is enough. Drawer 13 is still locked. Harold Finch is still trapped. The feeding schedule still continues, just stretched longer. But he's not alone anymore. And neither are we. We're bound together, for better or worse. Until death do us, well, until death redistributes the burden to whoever we mark next. Because that's how curses work. They continue, generation after generation, victim after victim, host after host. The best we can do is make the burden bearable, make the suffering shared, make the impossible sustainable, and hope that someday someone finds a way to break the cycle entirely. Until then, Drawer 13 stays locked. The protocols stay enforced, and the occupant stays fed. But now, at least, he has company in the darkness, and that's something. Not everything, but something. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. We hear you, Harold. We're here. We're listening. And we're not leaving you alone.